The lake was a mirror that morning, glazed in a layer of fresh ice so smooth it looked like glass. The sun barely crept over the distant pine trees, casting a faint golden hue across the snow-covered landscape. Everything was quiet, hushed by the cold, as if the world had paused to hold its breath. It was the kind of silence that made even your own footsteps feel like an intrusion. I should have stayed inside. Mom had said so just an hour ago as I zipped up my coat and grabbed my gloves. "Jamie, don't go near the lake," she warned, her voice sharp with worry. "It's not thick enough yet." But Toby had other plans. He was already at the front door, tail wagging like crazy, spinning in circles like he knew something exciting was waiting outside. My golden retriever had a sense for adventure, or trouble. And I, 11 years old and always too brave for my own good, couldn't resist. Just a quick walk, I told myself. Just enough to stretch his legs. I didn't plan on going anywhere near the lake. But I didn't plan on the rabbit either. It darted out from under the porch as soon as we stepped outside. Toby took off after it like a shot, ears flapping, his leash slipping from my mittened hand. "Toby, stop!" I shouted, but he was already halfway across the snowy yard, a blur of gold against white. My boots pounded after him, crunching through snow, my breath steaming in the freezing air. I could hear my heart pounding harder than my footsteps. The rabbit veered toward the woods. Toby followed. And I followed Toby. Branches whipped against my coat as we crashed through the edge of the forest. The snow was deeper here, soft and powdery, slowing me down. My lungs burned and my cheeks stung from the cold. But I could still hear Toby barking up ahead, that high-pitched excited yelp he made when he thought he was winning a chase. His sound was the only thing I focused on, the only guide through the tangled trees. Then I heard something else. Crack. Sure. Hollow. I burst out of the trees and skidded to a stop. My boots crunched on brittle ice. Before me stretched the lake, glassy, smooth, deceptive. Not a single ripple disturbed it, and the forest reflected in the surface like a dream. I felt a knot twist in my stomach. Toby was halfway across. "No," I whispered, the horror catching in my throat. "Toby, come back." He didn't hear me. Or maybe he did but didn't care. He was locked onto the rabbit's scent, his nose down, legs slipping but determined. And I just knew, the ice couldn't hold him. I stepped onto the lake without thinking. The cold seeped through the soles of my boots instantly, biting into my toes. I crept forward, arms out, feet wide, heart pounding. "Toby," I called again, my voice shaking. "Please, boy, come back." He stopped, turned. His ears perked. For a moment he looked like he might come. Then the ice beneath him groaned. It happened fast. Too fast. There was a sharp crack, a splash, and then Toby was gone. "No!" I screamed. My legs moved before my brain could catch up. I dropped to my knees and scrambled across the ice, feeling it shift and flex under my weight. The hole was already closing with slush, ripples spiraling outward. "Toby!" I reached the edge and saw him. His fur a flash of gold beneath the surface, his paws flailing, his eyes wide and terrified. My hands plunged into the water. It was fire and ice at once, so cold it burned. I grabbed for him, fingers numbing instantly. "Toby, grab on!" I cried, yanking at his collar. He kicked, coughed, gasped. My hands locked around him, muscles straining. I pulled with everything I had. And for a second it worked. He scrambled up onto the ice, claws scratching, legs trembling. He was out. But I wasn't. The edge cracked, broke, and I fell in. The shock hit like a punch to the gut. The cold stole my breath. My scream never made it out. Water filled my ears, my nose. I kicked, thrashed, tried to find the hole, the light, anything. The world turned blue and black, my body a dull throb of pain. Then I surfaced, gasped, choked. The edge of the ice was just ahead. Toby stood there, barking frantically, his paws dancing. I reached out, tried to pull myself up. The ice cracked again, broke again, and I went under. Underwater, everything moved slower. The silence was thick, pressing in from all sides. I couldn't tell which way was up. My limbs felt like lead, my fingers useless paddles. I saw Toby's face above the surface in a flicker of light. A blur, a beacon. I had to get back. I had to live. Somewhere deep in my brain, instinct took over. I kicked hard. My hands brushed the ice. I felt the edge, sharp, thin, fragile. I latched on, pulled. My face broke the surface again. Air icy, thin, glorious. Toby. I sobbed, more breath than word. He barked wildly, running in circles. If someone heard him, maybe, just maybe, I could hold on. I didn't know how long I could last. The cold was in my bones now. My body trembled uncontrollably, teeth chattering. My vision blurred. But I clung to the ice. I clung to hope.
Time lost meaning. The cold had its own way of slowing everything down, turning seconds into minutes and thoughts into echoes. I don't remember how long I clung there, my fingers locked in a death grip on the brittle ice. My legs had gone numb, and my arms felt like they belonged to someone else. But I wouldn't let go. Toby barked again, louder this time. His voice cut through the wind like a lifeline. "Go, boy," I tried to whisper. "Go get help." I wasn't even sure if I said it out loud. He hesitated. He looked back at me, his body trembling from the cold, from fear. Then he turned and ran. I watched his golden shape vanish toward the woods, back toward home. My chest tightened. What if he couldn't find the way? What if no one listened? The water lapped at my neck. My grip faltered. I blinked slowly, willing myself to stay awake. The cold didn't just hurt anymore, it dulled everything, like my mind was floating just outside my body. Images flashed behind my eyes. Mom's face at the breakfast table, worrying over the forecast. Dad's old flannel jacket still hanging by the door even though he was gone. Toby as a puppy, chewing my shoelaces while I laughed so hard I cried. I couldn't die here. Not like this. Not today. A jolt of something, panic or adrenaline or sheer stubbornness, snapped through me. I kicked again, shoved with my arms, and clawed at the slick ice. I managed to drag myself halfway out before the edge cracked again under my weight. "No!" I gasped, sliding back to the brink. But it held. Just barely. I flattened my chest against the ice and rolled, just like they taught in school if you ever fell in. Spread out your weight. Move slow. Don't panic. Don't panic. I inched forward, then again. My soaked clothes dragged at me, heavy as lead. Every move sent sharp pain through my limbs, but I kept going. When I reached solid ground, I collapsed face first into the snow. I lay there, sobbing, my breath fogging the air. The snow felt warm compared to the water. I didn't even try to move for a while. I just lay there, staring at the sky. Then I heard barking. And voices. Faint at first, but growing louder. Urgent. "Over here," someone shouted. I tried to sit up but couldn't. My arms wouldn't obey. A moment later, boots crunched through the snow beside me. Strong hands lifted me, wrapped me in warmth, a jacket, then a blanket. "Jamie?" It was Mrs. Haskins from 2 houses down. Her eyes were wide with shock. "Sweetheart, we've got you. Just hold on." Toby jumped around us, barking wildly, his tail wagging with frantic joy. He licked my face like he was trying to make sure I was really there. "You're okay," I whispered to him, though it came out as a hoarse croak. "You did it, boy. You brought them." Someone else came running with a phone. "Ambulance is on the way. We need to keep him warm." They lifted me onto a sled they'd brought from the Haskins garage and pulled me through the snow, back toward home. Every bump jolted my aching body, but I didn't care. I was out. I was alive. Toby stayed beside me the whole way. As they bundled me into the back of the ambulance, I caught a glimpse of the lake through the trees. It looked the same as before, quiet, beautiful, deadly. But now it held a piece of me. And I had taken something from it, too, the knowledge that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. Inside the ambulance, the paramedics wrapped me in thick blankets and started checking my vitals. One of them gently removed my soaked boots and socks. My feet were pale, and I could barely wiggle my toes. "He's got early signs of frostbite," one of them said. "We need to warm him gradually. No hot packs yet." They gave me warm air, fluids, and words of comfort I barely heard. My eyes kept drifting to the back window, watching Toby's golden form keeping pace behind us until the snowy road swallowed him up. The hospital was a blur, bright lights, warm rooms, more questions. A nurse helped me into dry clothes, my hands still trembling. The doctor checked my fingers and toes, then nodded with relief. "You're lucky," she said. "A little longer and it could have been much worse." Mom arrived not long after, her face streaked with tears, her arms crushing me in the tightest hug I'd ever felt. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my throat raw. She pulled back just enough to look at me, brushing wet hair from my forehead. "Don't ever scare me like that again," she said, her voice breaking. "But I'm so proud of you. So proud." I buried my face into her shoulder and let the tears come freely. I didn't know what scared me more, how close I came to dying, or how close I came to giving up. Later that night, the nurses let Toby into my room. He leapt onto the bed without hesitation and curled up beside me, his body a warm weight against mine. I stroked his fur slowly, whispering thanks into his ear. "Good boy," I murmured. "You saved my life." He looked up at me, eyes wide and gentle, and rested his head on my chest. As I drifted off to sleep, the sound of his breathing beside me was the most comforting thing in the world. I didn't dream of the lake, or the ice, or the cold. I dreamed of running through fields in spring, Toby chasing butterflies. Of laughter, warmth, and second chances. The next morning, I woke up to a soft beeping and the scent of antiseptic. Sunlight spilled through the hospital window, bouncing off the white walls. For a second, I didn't remember where I was. Then the ache in my limbs and the raw tightness in my chest reminded me. The lake. The fall. The freezing water. Toby. I sat up slowly, the thin blanket slipping off my shoulders. My arms were covered in faded bruises. My fingers still tingled with stiffness. Across the room, curled in the visitor's chair, was Mom. Her face was pale, drawn tight with worry even in sleep. And on the floor at her feet, Toby. He looked up the moment I stirred. His ears perked, tail thumping once against the linoleum. Carefully, he padded over to the side of my bed, lifting his snout to rest it gently on the mattress. "Hey, buddy," I whispered, stroking between his ears. "Still here?" His eyes met mine, full of something I couldn't quite name, loyalty, maybe. Or understanding. A nurse peeked in not long after. "Good morning, Jamie. How are we feeling today?" "Sore," I admitted. "But, okay." She smiled and checked my chart, then helped me sit up straighter. "You've got visitors lined up all day. Half the town wants to hug you." I nodded absently, but my mind was already somewhere else. Back on that ice. In that silence. In the water. Even now, in this warm room, a phantom chill lingered on my skin. Later that day, Mrs. Haskins stopped by with hot chocolate and cookies. She squeezed my hand and said Toby had never stopped barking once he reached her house. "He saved you, sweetheart," she said. "He knew exactly where to go." I tried to smile, but something tugged at my chest. Guilt, maybe. Or confusion. Why had I chased the rabbit? Why hadn't I listened to Mom? What if Toby had gone in too deep? My hands trembled slightly as I reached for the mug. That night, alone in the hospital bed, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it again, the moment Toby disappeared through the ice, the black water swallowing him. My own reflection staring back at me, twisted by panic and helplessness. The way the cold wrapped around me like chains. I sat up in bed, hugging my knees. "Are you okay?" Mom's voice was soft, coming from the chair. I hadn't realized she was still awake. I don't know." My voice cracked. "I keep seeing it." She came over and sat beside me, pulling the blanket around my shoulders. "It's normal to be scared. What you went through, it was a lot. It's okay to feel shaken." I looked at her, eyes filling again. "I thought I was going to die." "I know." She wrapped her arms around me. "But you didn't. You're here. And that means something, Jamie." I pressed my face into her shoulder. For a long time, we didn't say anything. Just sat in the silence that now felt safer than it had out on that lake. The next morning, the doctor said I could go home. Just take it slow, she warned. Warm baths, rest, and maybe talk to someone. Trauma like that doesn't just fade away. I nodded, though I wasn't sure what I was supposed to say to anyone. How do you explain what it feels like to face your own end? To fight your way out of it? At home, everything looked the same, but I didn't feel the same. I kept catching myself staring out the window at the trees beyond our yard. Beyond those trees was the lake. And even though it was beautiful, the sight of it made my stomach twist. Toby never left my side. He slept beside my bed every night, his warmth and steady breathing the only thing that helped me rest. During the day, he followed me from room to room. Mom said it was like he knew. One afternoon, a few days later, I sat on the porch steps, bundled in layers, sipping tea. Toby lay at my feet. The sun glinted on the snow, and in the distance, I could hear the faint cracking of ice shifting. I flinched. Toby looked up at me, sensing my reaction. I placed a hand on his head. "I don't think I'll ever go near that lake again," I whispered. But as the words left my mouth, I wasn't sure if I meant them. Part of me knew I'd have to go back. Not to tempt fate. Not to prove anything. But to reclaim something. Something that the ice almost took. Days passed, then a week. Life tried to settle back into its rhythms, school, meals, chores, but nothing felt the same. I drifted through it all like I was watching someone else live my life. Smiles came slower. Nights were harder. I still woke up sometimes with my heart racing, the sound of cracking ice echoing through my dreams. Mom gave me space but never left me alone too long. She watched me carefully, quietly, like she was afraid I'd break. Sometimes I would catch her staring when she thought I wasn't looking, her eyes filled with something like helplessness. Toby stayed near me constantly. His presence grounded me. Every time I touched his fur, I remembered that I wasn't just a victim of that lake, I was a survivor. But still, the fear lingered. The what-ifs. The images. And always, the question, would I ever be okay again? One morning, I sat on my bed staring at a notebook full of blank pages. I used to love writing. Short stories, silly poems, comic strips. Now, the words wouldn't come. I closed the book with a sigh. That's when Mom knocked gently. "There's someone here to see you," she said. I followed her to the living room, where Mr. Collins, my old science teacher, stood by the fireplace holding a book. He smiled warmly. "I heard you've been through quite the ordeal," he said, kneeling beside the couch. "I wanted to bring you something." He handed me the book. The cover read, "Survivor Stories, Kids Who Beat the Odds." "I thought you might see yourself in some of these," he said. "They're not all about falling through ice, but they're all about people who made it through hard things." I nodded, running my fingers over the pages. "Thanks." That night, I read the first few chapters under the covers with a flashlight. One story was about a girl who escaped a house fire. Another about a boy lost in the woods for 2 days. Each one reminded me of something I hadn't felt since the hospital. Strength. The next day, I asked Mom if we could go for a walk. Not to the lake, just around the edge of the forest. She raised an eyebrow but didn't hesitate. Of course. We bundled up, and Toby trotted happily ahead of us. The air was crisp, the snow crunching beneath our boots. The sun peeked through bare branches, warming my face. For a while, we walked in silence. Then I stopped. "I want to go back," I said. Mom looked at me. "To the lake?" I nodded. "Just to see it." "I need to." She hesitated, then took my hand. "Okay. But only if you feel ready." "I think I do." We made our way slowly through the trees, past the bend in the trail, until the glint of the frozen water appeared through the branches. The lake was still and silent, the ice a dull silver in the light. The hole I'd fallen through had long since refrozen, smoothed over like it had never been there. Toby paused at the edge of the trees, tail low, ears perked. I stopped beside him, heart thumping in my chest. The air felt heavier there, like it carried memories. I took a deep breath. "I don't hate it," I said. Mom stood beside me quietly. "I thought I would. I thought I'd never be able to look at it again. But it's just a lake. It didn't mean to hurt me." Toby took a cautious step forward, sniffing the snow. I watched him, remembering how he barked for help, how he didn't run. The picture of his face above the surface, eyes filled with loyalty, flickered in my mind. "I'm not the same kid who fell in," I whispered. Mom wrapped her arm around my shoulder. "No, you're not. You're braver now. Even if you don't feel it yet." I nodded slowly. "I want to come back here again. Not today. But soon. And I want to write about it. About what happened. Not just the scary parts. All of it." "I think that's a great idea." We stood there a while longer, just watching the lake. The fear wasn't gone, but something else was stronger now. Peace. Back home, I opened my notebook again. This time, the words came easily. I wrote about the wind on the lake, the feeling of cold like knives, the flash of Toby's eyes above the surface. I wrote about the silence, and the way it wrapped around me. And I wrote about climbing out, inch by inch, fighting to live. When I was done, I read it to Toby. He lay beside me, head tilted, tail thumping once like he understood. That night, I slept without nightmares. The lake was still part of me, but so was the rescue. So was the strength. So was the hope. In the days that followed, I wrote every morning. I wrote poems, journal entries, even a letter to the lake. I read that one to Mom. She didn't say much, just hugged me so tight it hurt a little, in the best way. A week later, I went back to the lake alone. I didn't step on the ice. I just sat on a rock and listened. And for the first time, the sound didn't scare me. It sang like it used to. Cold and pure and alive. The sky was a soft gray when I returned to the lake again. It had been nearly a month since the fall. The snow was thicker now, blanketing the landscape like a memory untouched. The path I took this time was slower, steadier. Toby walked beside me without a leash, his steps quiet in the powdery snow. When I reached the clearing where the lake came into view, I stopped and inhaled deeply. The cold no longer felt like a threat. It felt like truth, sharp, honest, and alive. I stepped closer to the edge, careful but not afraid. I didn't go out onto the ice. I didn't need to. The edge was enough. Toby sat beside me and let out a long, slow breath. I reached down and scratched behind his ears. "We did it," I said softly. In my hand was something new, a folded piece of paper, a short story I had written the night before. It wasn't just about falling through the ice. It was about what came after. The way silence can change you. The way fear can grow into strength. I unfolded it and began to read aloud. My voice trembled at first, but with each word, it steadied. The trees stood still. The lake listened. When I finished, I folded the story again and tucked it into my jacket. "I think I'm ready," I whispered. Over the next few weeks, I returned often. Sometimes with Toby. Sometimes with Mom. Sometimes alone. I brought my notebook each time. I wrote everything, my fears, my strength, the things I couldn't say out loud, and even the parts one hadn't fully understood until I saw them in ink. One Saturday, Mom handed me a flyer from the community center. "They're holding a winter writing contest," she said, a smile tugging at her lips. "Theme is survival." My fingers tingled as I read it. "Do you think I should?" "I think you already have the perfect story," she replied. So I entered. I typed up my story, printed it, and sealed it in an envelope. I handed it over at the desk with a flutter in my chest. Weeks passed. I didn't think about the contest much, I had already won something bigger. Then one day, a letter arrived. I tore it open, and my breath caught. First place. They wanted me to read it at the winter fair. In front of everyone. I panicked. I can't do that, I told Mom. She touched my shoulder gently. You already survived the lake, Jamie. This is just telling people how you found your way back. The night of the fair, I stood on the little stage in the town hall, my story in my hands, my heart pounding. People filled the chairs, neighbors, classmates, teachers. Mom smiled from the front row. Toby sat at her feet, ears perked. I took a deep breath and began to read. As the words flowed, the room faded away. I wasn't scared. I was telling the truth. I was letting the story live outside me. When I finished, the silence that followed was warm, not cold. Then came the applause, loud, strong, real. Afterward, people came up to me. They shook my hand. Told me they were proud. Some shared their own stories. A few cried. One girl hugged me and said, I fell once too. On the way home, Toby sat beside me in the back seat. I rested my head on his and closed my eyes. In the weeks that followed, something in me changed. I smiled more. Slept better. I found myself laughing again, really laughing. That laugh, the kind that shakes your whole chest, had been missing for a while. I welcomed it back like an old friend. I started helping other kids in school who were going through tough stuff. I listened more. I wrote more. One day, I wrote a new story, not about the lake, but about the future. A boy who once fell through ice, now helping others find their strength. It felt right. That spring, the lake melted. I watched from the same rock where I'd once sat in fear. The ice cracked and shifted, then disappeared, revealing water once more, deep, clear, and still. Toby barked at a passing duck, wagging his tail. I laughed. I didn't fear the lake anymore. I respected it. And I respected myself even more. Because I hadn't just survived the fall. I had risen from it. A few months later, my school counselor invited me to speak during assembly. We think it would mean a lot to the other students, she said, to hear your story in your own words. I hesitated at first. The thought of standing in front of hundreds of eyes made my stomach twist. But I remembered what Mom said, that sharing the story wasn't about performance. It was about connection. So I agreed. The gym was packed. I clutched my notes and took the stage. My voice shook at first, but then it found its rhythm. I talked about fear, about survival, about finding light after darkness. I didn't just talk about the lake, I talked about healing. When I finished, the clapping wasn't thunderous, but it was sincere. A boy from 8th grade came up afterward. My dad died last year, he said quietly. I didn't think I could talk about it. But now, maybe I can. In that moment, I knew this journey had become something bigger than me. Over the summer, I volunteered at a writing camp. I helped younger kids put their emotions on paper. Some wrote about monsters, some about superheroes. One girl wrote a poem about her parents' divorce that made me tear up. I encouraged them all. Your voice matters, I told them. Your stories matter. When the snow returned, I visited the lake once more. This time, I didn't go to write. I didn't go to face fear. I went to say thank you. Toby sat beside me, older now but still full of spirit. I ran my fingers through his fur. Because of you, I whispered, I found my strength. He licked my hand and leaned into me. And just like that, the cold no longer felt like something to survive. It felt like part of the story. Later that day, I found myself sketching in the margins of my notebook. Not just words, images. The outline of the lake. A boy standing at the edge. A dog beside him. The image felt whole. I shared the sketch at school, and one of the teachers suggested submitting it to the Art and Lit magazine. They published it alongside an excerpt from my original story. I saw my name in print for the first time. And beneath it, My story, the one I once thought I'd never be brave enough to tell. That night, Mom framed a magazine page. It hung in the hallway, a reminder of the boy who fell and rose. One afternoon, months later, I found a younger student waiting outside the library after our writers' group. She clutched a notebook to her chest and looked nervous. "Can I show you something?" she asked. I nodded. She read a story about a girl lost in the woods, scared but brave, who found her way home by following stars. When she finished, I saw something in her eyes, hope, and maybe healing. "You wrote this?" I asked. She nodded, cheeks flushing. "It's beautiful," I told her. "Keep writing. Someone out there needs your story." As the seasons passed, I kept visiting the lake. Each time, I saw something new, how the light touched the trees, how the silence settled. It wasn't just a place where something bad happened. It was where something brave happened, too. And eventually, I understood. We all fall through ice in our own way. What matters is how we climb out.